Today we are going to look at a few very bizarre Overwatch careers. Instead of the typical sign and play on a roster, maybe their careers were random, or possibly they get signed for a DPS role and then have a flex support player come in instead. I tried my best to avoid purely random people with no story behind them, like Takoyaki or Kaneki, who only played 1 or 2 maps and never got fielded again. Unless their story is truly eye-opening, there's not really much to talk about with those people, but today we have some more interesting ones. Our first Overwatch League character is one who actually created a lot of anger throughout the community. As we all know, Chipsa is a renowned Doomfist player and one of the fastest humans on Earth, always showcasing he is more than capable on this hero. Traditionally, after 2018, one-tricks were rarely ever signed. Who Are You is the only player I could think of who was a genuine one-trick of Genji. Shanghai kept him on the bench until he was needed, and it worked out shockingly well. Apparently, the best Genji of all time was just wasting away on the bench. When it comes to Doomfist though, at least in my mind, there isn't really a time signing a one-trick would work out or make much sense. DPS Doom is such a niche hero, only played in specific strategies, and has only been meta like once or twice. Hack Fist played by Element Mystic in 2019, and the Overwatch League playoffs of 2019. Other than that, we've seen Tank Doom more than his DPS iteration at this level of play. DPS Doom would need to be overpowered for someone to sign a one-trick, so when Chipsa joined the Philadelphia Fusion during the 2020 season, some people were quite pissed off.
I'm angry and I'm passionate about this because there are other tier 2 players and there are other tier 3 players out there who have been grinding for an opportunity like Chipsa was gifted for absolute years, and they have been passed over. And this move, beyond everything else I am talking about, is disrespectful to them.
52 seconds ago, esports is the future, but it's not going to invent itself. Jade is going to invent esports!
I can understand why some onlookers got angry about this signing. People grind for years and years and never get an opportunity to join Overwatch League, as the inventor of esports said. Then here comes a guy who is brother to one of the coaches, which is the main talking point here. Most assumed it was a nepotism signing similar to Fleta playing tank in 2023, which on paper, this signing does look bad. Miraculously, your brother is the coach, and then oh look, you're signed when the only hero Chipsa would ever play at this level is Doom. It's not to say Chipsa is a bad player, at least during this point in time, but compared to the other DPS on this roster, like come on, we have Hisu, Ivy, Carpe, and EQO. Compared to those players, he is completely worthless. Did his Iron Skull add that much to the team? But thankfully, Philip himself did talk about the nepotism. He came out on his stream saying how his brother was initially against the signing because he cares more about his reputation rather than signing an ogre to his team, which is understandable. Most people wouldn't do something to jeopardize their entire career and make themselves look like an NPC intentionally. Regardless of the whole situation, as viewers, we wanted to see Chipsa play. Questions obviously arose if that would happen. You're saying a team with like Carpe, EQO, Hisu, and Ivy as DPS. Not a single one of them could play Doom at the level required to pull off a specific map strategy, since as I previously stated, that's all Doom was used for at this point. Our worries did come to an end though when we got to see the ultimate Doomfist streamer play his one map, Oasis against the Vancouver Titans. This is probably gonna shock you, but this was one of the worst teams in 2020. This map was an absolute stomp where Chipsa performed well enough, but let's be real, you could have had any of their DPS players pick Doom here. Even one of their supports or tanks could play it and the results would be exactly the same. The skill disparity was so drastic from team to team here, it literally didn't matter. My only true complaint is why did they only make him play one map? Vancouver was so bad, just let the streaming ogre play the other 2. But sadly, they just didn't want to for some reason. I don't know why. Chipsa never played again, obviously, mainly because there wasn't really much of a reason for him to. In my eyes, it seems like this was a publicity signing. Overwatch League was making content on it. There was even a viewer spike when Chipsa played his map. Philly Fusion was selling shirts. So if that publicity signing is the truth, it clearly worked. Chipsa is one of the few people to have a 100% win rate throughout Overwatch League. Some people refer to him as the greatest League player of all time due to this fact alone, which is understandable. Like, he got Violet, Lip, and Prophet. who most consider the GOATs of this game, they don't even have that, so it's hard to argue with the math. At least Chipsa had a humble interview proclaiming his feats and true talent for the Overwatch world to sip on.
So you're 1-0, undefeated. What does that mean to you personally?
Well, I mean, it's to be expected. I mean, pretty much the best player. I would argue the best player to ever live. But, you can say whatever you want. It's fine. But, I mean, what else do you expect from me? Undefeated, best player. It is what it is.
Our next player is someone who actually had promise to their name, debuted way back in 2020 London Spitfire after their original Profit, Gesture, Fury, and Friends roster was done with. They wanted to try something new, going with an entire 12-man roster of rookies, probably Overwatch League's forgotten roster, filled with players most don't even remember. Do you remember Shui? Maybe Fuse? Probably not, but this automobile wreck is where Glister started to make a name for himself. A hitscan player that showed quite a bit of promise, playing what you'd expect, also sharing a hero pool with Babel, who some may know from 2023 Gladiators, but he was a DPS at this time. Out of all 4 DPS players, Glister was the best for sure. When he wasn't getting subbed out, which seemed to be London Spitfire's reasoning of downfall in 2020, the constant rotations actually gave me a headache to watch. Glister's Widow, Cassidy, and even Tracer play wasn't that bad. He had some strong moments throughout the season, but as we know, it can be hard for one to truly shine on a team that's sinking. Spitfire was at the bottom of 8-pack for a reason. We all hoped Glister would have a future after 2020. The guy looked solid, so surely somewhere he would be able to take up the hitscan reins. And to our surprise, that somewhere would be the San Francisco Shock, just coming off of their 2020 back-to-back championship. Expectations from the community were soaring through the skies, as expected when someone joins the normie team. You're essentially replacing Ons here, so it's going to be mentally rough. All the bandwagoners will be happy if you do well, but that player also must be prepared to be blamed for any struggles the roster would have. But that's not possible, right? All the holes were filled. We got Tayo, Striker, Nero, and Glister for DPS. How could it go wrong? As the season opened, it appeared Striker took up the hitscan reins for Shock until the third map where Violet played Cassidy, the infamous match. We got this on the opening day of 2021. It was not bad. His aim is obviously great. It's Violet. But still, why? Glister came in for his first map here alongside Violet playing Tracer, which makes no sense. Striker at this point in time was considered to be one of the best in the world at that hero, and you have someone else playing it while the flex support is playing the role that Glister was originally signed for. No one really knew what to make of this situation, but we all thought it would just be a one-time thing. If we put the Violet Cassidy aside and just talk about Striker, his performances were not awful, to be fair. It was a solid 5 out of 10, just average. Granted, he never played hitscan really before 2021, unless you count Hanzo as a hitscan. This was going to be his first year where he was always playing it, or so we thought. But if we rewind here for a second, if you thought Striker could be capable to have the hitscan role, why even sign Glister in the first place? This was exacerbated more when in the second match against Houston, which was a fantastic match by the way, Violet comes in to play Cassidy on Dorado, and Glister also comes in to play Tracer again. So I'm going to ask one more time. Why do you have the person you signed for hitscan play Tracer when you have Striker who can play it, who most considered a top Tracer coming out of 2020, or better yet, why do you have the player you signed for hitscan not play hitscan, and the flex support player comes in to play hitscan instead? Is he the invisible man? Glister's right there. He's in the server. I see his name. He can play Cassidy. We've seen him do it before. 2 maps later, we do see Glister play Cassidy a little bit where Shock inevitably lost. It didn't look that bad, but he was kind of tossed in, so what do you expect? Shock looked as if they were just throwing shit at the wall and see what sticks. Fast forwarding to the 4th match of 2021's first stage, when I saw Striker playing Tracer and Violet playing hitscan again, the confusion radiating from my mind was unfathomable. Did Strike Tyson bite a piece of Glister's ear off so he couldn't play? We all knew he had the rage issues. Is there a part of the contract where Violet can't be subbed out? Why do you sign a player, then just play someone from another role on his hero picks? It makes no sense. This is similar to Junbin Baptiste or Max Lucio from 2023. Funnily enough, Glister did actually show a few good performances in 2021 when he was able to play. The only loss Dallas took during June Joust, aside from the Dragons, was from Shock. Glister had an insane Dorado with Widow. You're benching a guy who's capable of doing this right here? Like, really, Dusty? I don't want to go super deep into that Shock roster. Clearly, it was a disaster if you couldn't already tell. At least internally, because somehow this team did have a really good record and got 4th at the end of the season. Glister was just kind of screwed over in my eyes. Like, I get it, haha, Violet's the best player of all time. But seriously, there's no reason he should ever be playing Hitscan over Glister. It's kind of an insult to him because the kid isn't that bad. Of course, that was the narrative being spun around the community. I read a comment that I thought was interesting while looking at Glister's footage from Dallas versus Shock by someone named Purple, and he says, I actually hate my fellow Shock fans. During the Toronto game, everyone was like, cut Glister. He's shit. We need Ons, not this plat player. And now suddenly everyone loves him and says nice things. In my opinion, you're not a fucking fan if you're only there when the team is doing well. And I agree. But first off, Purple, you're doing something wrong when you turn the Twitch or YouTube chat on during a competitive Overwatch match. Turn that shit off. Get it off your screen. 2, that's just bandwagoning right there. It's like the plague of competitive anything. I highlighted this comment because I do feel like Glister has this really bad reputation from this year on Shock, when in reality, the guy was never put into a position to succeed. This was supposed to be his chance to show what he's capable of. Towards playoff time, it appeared things are starting to get in line for Glister, mainly playing Sombra and Symmetra, but I really wish we got to see him a lot more throughout the season. After 2021, similar to when he left London, we hoped like, man, this guy needs to get a real team that will let him play. And he got one alright. The 2022 Paris Eternal. A new home for this kid with his friend J-Mac, who he shared a team with during 2020 London Spitfire days, and that's the only person who speaks his language on this team. That's not good. Glister sort of felt like the odd man out. You got a bunch of European boys, and then you have one Korean guy who can't speak English. This went exactly as expected, being one of the worst performing teams in North America. They just lost 6 matches in a row where Glister just said, fuck this, and left. Dove came in to take Glister's spot on Paris, where they went on to be one of the worst teams you could ever taint your eyes looking at. I'm not saying Glister would have been God's gift to players and people 100 years from now would be scavenging through the dump to find the keyboard he used, but he deserved so much more than 2 awful teams and a place where he had no room to succeed, which we're about to dive more into in a minute. But for Glister, this guy is a prime example of wasted potential. Our final player was the inspiration for this entire video, Tayo, probably Overwatch's strangest player pickup ever, the first and only Japanese player to ever be signed to Overwatch League. Not many people knew about him because he barely ever played in the league, and most questioned why he was even on the team, which was valid. According to Liquipedia, the most valuable source of all time, Tayo was actually kicking ass during contenders in 2020. His team was 3rd Impact, and ones in the know seemed to believe Tayo was a rising star with a ton of potential. I mean, we got William Zhao over here calling him Pine, so maybe he truly was a god we never got to experience. After he got signed to the Shock for Countdown Cup, it seemed to be an angry signing, similar to Who Are You on Shanghai Dragons. They just wanted someone to play Genji. At least I believe that's the case, since Tayo only played Genji on the Shock. It doesn't really make any sense because he's a hitscan player, and with the performances Ons was having in 2020, why would you sign someone else to play hitscan? Tayo being signed for Genji is the only logical conclusion I could come up with, but it's also not logical since Genji is not in Tayo's hero pool. When we got to see him play on the Shock, he didn't look bad, but in reality, you can't honestly gauge much after 2 matches, which is all he played in 2020. As the season closed out, Tayo was just rotting on the bench, where some claimed he was a developmental player, which I don't really see a reasoning to give someone a contract for that, but we had nothing else to go off of here. His appearance and signing was just completely random. Shockingly, he was kept on for 2021, which is where this story takes a turn for the worst. We had Ons retire, and also they picked up Glister. Similar to a lot of people, they must have forgotten Tayo was here. Like, that guy's a hit scan player, right? Like, that's his hero pool. Anyone who checked out his third Impact matches knows this. So why do you sign another hit scan player? But the best part of this whole situation, and I've said it so many times, is how both Glister and Tayo were hitscan players, but neither of them ever really played hitscan. As a viewer, you're sat there wondering, why are these two players even here? Especially due to the fact Tayo was considered to be a great up-and-comer, and as we talked about with Glister before, that kid had quite a bit of potential. So when you have Striker being the main hitscan at the beginning, with Violet coming in to play it at other times, where both Glister and Tayo were more than capable hitscans just sitting on the bench, we're going to be wondering what's happening. It just confuses me and blows my mind so much. I hope everything is coming across to make some sort of sense, because in my mind, this whole situation doesn't make any. I'm not sure about Glister, but when it comes to Tayo, there seemed to be animosity towards him from Krusty. According to this Reddit post I found, and yes, I know, haha, Reddit, but it's essentially translating a few things Tayo was talking about on one of his streams during 2021. The only thing that makes me believe its validity was the fact Nero liked the original tweet who was the Flex DPS player on Shock for that year. It states, Tayo was in charge of many maps at the beginning of the league, meaning in the 2021 year, at Krusty's discretion. This is because he was doing quite well in scrims. However, the tide changed dramatically when Tayo failed against Houston and San Francisco Shock lost that game, that being one of their first few matches and only match Tayo played. Since that defeat, Tayo has not been able to sit in a scrim at all. There were many days he would just watch from the back room as the other members scrimmed, and in terms of players, he heard that Striker was causing a lot of conflicts. There was also a situation where Tayo and Glister, who were supposed to be on the starting roster or be replacements, were unable to participate last minute. There were many times FD and Violet were talking to Tayo about how they wanted him to play Cassidy. It goes further on to mention how Tayo was losing motivation as he realized he wasn't needed by the coaches. Krusty profusely apologized to Tayo, saying the meta is evolving too quickly and there wasn't time to develop him. That Shock versus Houston loss was obviously not his fault. The kid played one map. Yes, they did lose that map, but how can you blame him for the whole series? It's really unfortunate that not one, but two players had completely wasted talent on the 2021 Shock roster, but currently it seems that both of these players are doing quite well outside of Overwatch League. Tayo's streams are going off like crazy, they're unbelievably popular with the Japanese viewers, and Glister opened up a shopping mall, I think, like a whole ass mall, so the universe paid them back for their misery from Dusty. Even though the Shock had a good season in 2021, it's no secret they had a ton of internal issues. We all know the Striker Nero drama, on top of the situation with Tayo. I'm guessing drama is the reason Violet was playing Cassidy as well, along with plenty of other things that have probably never been brought to the public. But as viewers, we can only look from the outside, and I think most will agree it's a shame to see both Tayo and Glister go to waste like this. Those were a few players with weird Overwatch careers instead of the traditional plug-and-play ones that we always talk about. Maybe if there's some more players I can find with interesting stories who suffered a similar fate, I'll make a series out of it. But as always, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on these players. Do you feel like they were punished and not given enough opportunities, or do you feel like they got what they deserve? I'm including Chipsa on that question as well. Make sure to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching to the end. Make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe if you haven't already, and also check out my other video on something more positive, a crazy player redemption of him song, or whatever the kids call them these days. It's something like that. I don't know. He song.